Okay, so you have created a web application. You've put some HTML files in web content, maybe some JavaScript files in a subdirectory of web content. And again, start by just copying an example that you already had working before. And now you need to run that application on a web server. Now, the simple example that you copied before works whether or not you're on a web server. All the examples up to now worked by just dragging the HTML file onto a browser. But the upcoming examples where we use JavaScript and jQuery to talk to the server will only work if you're running a server. So practice now, and then we'll apply it to Ajax in upcoming sections. So to deploy the project, the first thing you do is you click on the little Servers tab at the bottom. And again, I'll do this all interactively shortly, but this is a good reference to come back to later. You right-click on Tomcat, and you choose Add and Remove. So it looks something like that when you right-click on Tomcat. And you choose the entry that says Add and Remove apps, projects. You choose the project that you just created. You press Add, and then you say Finish. Now the project is on the server, but the server isn't running. So you need to start the server. You go back to the bottom again, right-click on Tomcat once more, and now you choose Start. If Tomcat is already running, in other words, you forgot to stop it before you deployed your project, then choose the entry that says Restart. Once you've started the server with your application running on it, you need to try it out. And the way to try it out is to go to your browser, type in http localhost / and then the name of the project that you just invented, and then the name of the HTML file that you put inside web content. So localhost / the Eclipse project name / the name of the HTML file inside web content. Okay, let's try it. All right, let's interactively walk through making a project, putting some files in it, and deploying the project to Tomcat, then trying it in our browser. So first thing, make a project. So go to the File menu, say New, select Project, scroll down to where it says Web, and then choose Dynamic Web Project, and then you could say Next and so forth. However, I want to point out that once you've done that once, the next time it's a little bit simpler. You can say File, New, Dynamic Web Project. Eclipse will remember that that's one of your common choices. You go through either of those approaches, and now you need to give the project a name. You can give it any name you want as long as the name doesn't contain characters that are illegal in URLs. So avoid slashes, avoid spaces, avoid ampersands. And so I will call this jQuery-overview because my test case will be to take the sample files that I had before in just a normal folder from the last lecture, overview of jQuery. I'll copy them into this dynamic web project and see if they run the same way when I launch them on Tomcat as when I just drag the HTML file onto my browser. The next thing to do is to verify that under configuration, it says configuration for Tomcat. It's probably the default, but make sure once you do it once, it'll be the default next time. All right, so then I say Finish. And then over on the left-hand side, it creates a project. If I open up that project, you see that there's a folder called Web Content. The folders under Web Content and the folders above Web Content, you don't need to worry about. Those are for server-side developers. But Web Content is where you put your HTML files, and usually a subfolder of Web Content is where you put your style sheets, images, and JavaScript files. Okay, so back in the previous section when we overviewed jQuery, we had some files. So let me Control-C, copy those files that we just deployed to our browser by copying them, and this time put them in our dynamic web project. So right-click on Web Content and say Paste. So now I have a CSS folder, a scripts folder, and an HTML file that refers to those files. These are the same files that I used in the previous lecture, and I just dragged the HTML files onto the browser. Now I want to launch a real web server and access them through the web server. So then I go to Tomcat at the bottom, I right-click, and I say Add and Remove. I select my project, I move it over to the right with Add, I say Finish, Then I right-click on Tomcat again, and I say Start. If you failed to shut Tomcat down previously, then instead of saying Start, say Restart. All right, and if everything is OK, you'll see a little message next to Tomcat saying that it has started. Now bring up a web browser. Go to localhost / whatever you named your Eclipse project. In this case, it's jQuery -overview. And I can click on a file, and I can see if it works. And since I copied everything over, the HTML file and the JavaScript files, sure enough, I get the same behavior as before, but I'm running it through an actual web server. The server is feeding it to me. I'm not just reading it off of the local disk. All right, one small trick that's slightly useful is if you go back to web content, to note that index.html is the default file name that Tomcat uses. So if I take that file and I right-click and I say rename, and I call it index.html, the difference is when I'm in a web browser, I don't have to type in the file name. I can just type in the project name and a /, and it will automatically retrieve the index file. And that's a convenient feature. OK, try it yourself before you go on farther.